The grand pavilion shimmered. Hundreds of firefly lanterns, each a tiny heart of light, pulsed softly amidst the fragrant orchids. Music drifted through the warm night air. A gentle melody played on lutes and harps. Tonight, Lord Ilara hosted a banquet in honor of the new Sultan Imran. Tonight, one of his 3 daughters might become a sultana. Layla, the eldest, preened in a gown of spun gold, her laughter ringing out above the murmur of the guests. She moved through the crowd like a sunbeam, drawing all eyes to her radiant beauty. Yasmin, the youngest, flitted from group to group like a hummingbird, her bright chatter filling every lull in the conversation. She charmed everyone with her playful wit. Soraya, the middle sister, remained in the shadows of the pavilion, tending to the delicate lanterns. She adjusted the wicks, ensuring each one burned with a steady glow. While her sisters commanded attention, Soraya preferred the quiet company of her thoughts, the swirling colors of the silks, the fragrant scent of jasmine, the soft glow of the lanterns. These were the details that filled her world, not the admiring glances of courtiers. Her mind, a quiet garden of its own, cultivated verses of poetry and observations of the world around her. She watched her sisters navigate the throng of nobles and dignitaries, each vying for the Sultan's notice. Layla, confident and dazzling, seemed certain of her victory. Yasmin, though younger, possessed a captivating charm that could easily win hearts. Soraya felt a pang of something, not envy, but a quiet understanding that she was different. She did not crave the spotlight. Her joys were found in the rustle of parchment, the flow of ink across a page, the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly crafted verse. The air crackled with anticipation as the Sultan was announced. Soraya retreated further into the shadows, content to observe from afar. She adjusted the wick of a nearby lantern, her fingers brushing against the cool glass, her mind already composing a poem about the fleeting beauty of fireflies. The whispers and murmurs of the crowd faded as she lost herself in the rhythm of words, the soft glow of the lanterns reflecting in her thoughtful eyes. Sultan Imran, disguised in simple scholar's robes, watched the festivities unfold. He moved through the crowd unnoticed, his keen eyes observing the guests. He sought not outward displays of grandeur, but genuine character, a trait often hidden beneath layers of finery and pretense. He saw Layla's dazzling performance, a whirlwind of silks and flashing jewels. Her dance, though technically flawless, felt hollow to him, a performance designed to impress rather than express. He saw Yasmin's playful banter, her effortless charm, but sensed a restlessness beneath her bright smile. Suddenly, the firefly lanterns flickered and dimmed, casting the pavilion into a soft twilight. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to nervous chatter. Layla's dance faltered, her smile replaced by a frown. Yasmin's playful chatter ceased. Lord Ilara looked about in concern, searching for a solution to the unexpected disruption. Then a clear, calm voice rose above the growing din. Like fireflies, our light may dim, yet within a steady flame does burn. It was Soraya. She stepped forward, not into the full light, but just enough to be seen. She held a single, brightly burning lantern aloft. Let not the shadows frighten, for even in darkness beauty can be discerned. She continued, reciting a short poem about the virtues of humility and inner strength. Her voice, though soft, held a quiet power that stilled the crowd. The nervous chatter subsided, replaced by a hushed awe. As Soraya finished her poem, the lanterns, as if by magic, regained their brilliance, bathing the pavilion once more in their warm glow. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd. Layla, though momentarily eclipsed, quickly recovered her composure and resumed her dance, now with renewed vigor. But Imran's attention was no longer on her. He found himself drawn to the quiet figure who had calmed the storm with the simple power of her words. He approached Soraya, still disguised as a scholar. "Your poem," he began, his voice a low murmur. "It spoke of a beauty that transcends the outward show. Tell me, where did you find such wisdom?" Soraya, surprised by his attention, looked at him with wide, curious eyes. "In the quiet corners of the library, amongst the pages of forgotten books," she replied, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Imran's interest piqued. He had found a kindred spirit, a soul who valued the quiet strength of words as much as he did. He engaged her in a conversation about literature, their shared passion sparking a connection that neither could ignore. The pavilion, with its glittering lights and swirling silks, faded into the background as they delved into the world of verses and stories, their words weaving a tapestry of shared understanding in the midst of the bustling celebration. The air in the pavilion gardens was cool and fragrant, a welcome respite from the heat of the crowded banquet hall. Soraya sought refuge amongst the jasmine bushes, their delicate white blossoms glowing faintly in the moonlight. She held a small volume of poetry in her hands, her fingers tracing the familiar lines of her favorite verses. The events of the evening still swirled in her mind. The dimmed lanterns, her impromptu poem, the scholar's unexpected attention. It was all rather unsettling, yet strangely exhilarating. She had never felt so seen, so understood. A fitting setting for such a beautiful poem. The scholar's voice startled her. He stood at the edge of the jasmine path, his simple robes blending with the shadows. Soraya closed her book, a blush rising in her cheeks. "You startled me," she said softly. "Forgive me. I did not mean to intrude upon your solitude." He stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the soft moonlight. "But I could not resist the opportunity to further discuss the wisdom you shared earlier." Soraya hesitated, then gestured to a nearby stone bench. "Please, join me." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle rustling of leaves in the night breeze. "You mentioned finding wisdom in forgotten books," the scholar began, his voice a low murmur. "Tell me, what treasures have you uncovered in your father's library?" Soraya's eyes lit up. "Oh, so many. Ancient scrolls filled with tales of brave heroes and wise philosophers. Poems that speak of love and loss, of joy and sorrow. Each page holds a new world waiting to be discovered." The scholar smiled. "I share your passion for the written word. There is a magic in stories, a power to transport us to other realms, to teach us about ourselves and the world around us." Ging! They talked for hours, their conversation flowing effortlessly from poetry to philosophy, from ancient history to the current state of the kingdom. Soraya found herself opening up to this stranger in a way she never had before. He listened intently, his questions insightful and thoughtful. He didn't dismiss her opinions or interrupt her thoughts. He truly seemed to value her words, her perspective. It was a novel experience to be heard, to be seen, not for her outward appearance, but for the thoughts and ideas that filled her mind. He spoke of his own travels, of the different cultures he had encountered, of the wisdom he had gleaned from scholars and poets from distant lands. Soraya listened, captivated by his stories, her own world expanding with each new piece of knowledge he shared. As the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky, the scholar rose to leave. "I must go," he said, a hint of regret in his voice, "but I hope we shall meet again soon." Soraya felt a pang of disappointment. She had enjoyed his company more than she cared to admit. "I hope so too," she replied softly. He bowed his head slightly, then turned and disappeared into the shadows of the garden, leaving Soraya alone with her thoughts and the lingering fragrance of jasmine blossoms. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that she was not invisible, but truly seen. The days that followed the banquet passed in a blur of activity. Layla, convinced that the Sultan had been captivated by her dance, spent hours preening and practicing new, even more elaborate routines. Yasmin, ever the social butterfly, flitted about the estate, charming every guest who crossed her path. Soraya, however, found herself drawn to the quiet sanctuary of her father's library. She spent hours amongst the towering shelves, losing herself in the worlds contained within the leather-bound volumes. She often found herself thinking of the scholar and their conversation in the garden. His words echoed in her mind, his insightful questions prompting her to delve deeper into her own thoughts and ideas. One afternoon, as Soraya was engrossed in a particularly fascinating treatise on ancient philosophy, she heard a familiar voice. "Forgive my intrusion, but I was hoping to borrow a certain volume on the history of the Silk Road." It was the scholar. He stood at the entrance to the library, a hesitant smile on his face. Soraya's heart skipped a beat. "Of course," she replied, her voice a little breathless. "I believe we have several copies. Please come in." He stepped into the library, his eyes scanning the rows of books with a mixture of awe and delight. "What a treasure trove!" he exclaimed. "I could spend a lifetime in here and still not uncover all its secrets." Soraya smiled. "Indeed, it is my favorite place in the whole world." They spent the next hour discussing books and authors, their shared passion creating a comfortable intimacy between them. He told her of his research, his desire to compile a comprehensive collection of poetry from across the kingdom. She, in turn, shared her own writing, her verses flowing freely in his presence. He listened with rapt attention, his comments insightful and encouraging. "Your words paint vivid pictures," he said, his voice a low murmur. "They speak of a soul that sees the world with uncommon clarity." Soraya blushed, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and something more. These stolen moments in the library became a regular occurrence. The scholar, always under the pretext of borrowing a book, would seek out Soraya's company. Their conversations deepened, their bond strengthening with each shared thought and whispered confidence. Layla, however, began to notice their frequent encounters. She saw the way the scholar's eyes lit up when he spoke to Soraya, the way their laughter filled the quiet corners of the library. A seed of jealousy began to sprout in her heart, a bitter resentment towards her quiet, unassuming sister. She couldn't understand why this learned scholar, this man of obvious intelligence and refinement, would choose to spend his time with Soraya instead of her. After all, wasn't she the beautiful one, the one destined for greatness? The thought festered within her, a dark cloud threatening to overshadow the carefully constructed image of perfection she had presented to the world. She watched them from afar, her eyes narrowed, her mind already plotting ways to reclaim the attention she felt was rightfully hers. The library was hushed, the only sound the gentle rustle of turning pages. Soraya held a flickering candle aloft, its light dancing across the towering shelves. She was searching for a particular volume of ancient poetry, a book she had promised to show the scholar on his next visit. She had come to cherish these stolen moments with him, their conversations a welcome escape from the pressures and expectations of her world. "Lost in the labyrinth of knowledge I see." The scholar's voice echoed from the shadows, startling her. He emerged from behind a tall bookshelf, a playful smile on his face. Soraya's heart fluttered at the sight of him. "I was just looking for a rather elusive volume," she replied, her voice a little breathless. "Perhaps I can assist you in your quest." He stepped closer, his eyes twinkling in the candlelight. "I seem to have a knack for uncovering hidden treasures." He took the candle from her hand and gestured towards a section of the library she had never noticed before. "Have you ever explored these hidden passageways?" he asked, his voice a low murmur. Soraya shook her head. "I didn't even know they existed." Then allow me to be your guide. He led her through a narrow opening concealed behind a revolving bookshelf. The passageway was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of dust and old parchment. Soraya followed him, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing in the narrow corridor. Finally, they emerged into a small, circular chamber. A single window high in the wall allowed a sliver of moonlight to illuminate the room. In the center stood a small table, upon which lay a single book. "I believe this is what you were searching for," the scholar said, his voice barely above a whisper. He picked up the book and handed it to Soraya. It was not the volume of ancient poetry she had been seeking. Instead, it was a beautifully bound edition of love poems, its pages filled with verses of longing and devotion. Soraya looked at him, her eyes wide with question. "These poems," he began, his voice a little unsteady, "they speak of feelings I can no longer keep hidden." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Soraya, He stopped mid-sentence, as if searching for the right words. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. He opened it, revealing a delicate silver necklace with a single luminous pearl. "This," he said, his voice soft and earnest, "is a token of my admiration." Soraya's heart beat faster. She knew in that moment that the scholar's feelings mirrored her own. She was hesitant, unsure of what to say, how to respond to this unexpected declaration. She closed the book of love poems and placed it on the table. Then she reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a small, folded piece of parchment. "I, too, have something to share," she said softly. She handed him the parchment, her fingers brushing against his. He unfolded the paper and read the verses written there. It was a poem about the quiet strength of a hidden flame, about the beauty that lies within, waiting to be discovered. As he read, a slow smile spread across his face. He looked up at Soraya, his eyes filled with a warmth that sent a shiver down her spine. He reached out and gently took her hand, his fingers interlacing with hers. "Soraya," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "My beautiful hidden Soraya." In the hushed silence of the hidden chamber, surrounded by the whispers of forgotten stories, a new chapter began to unfold, a chapter filled with the promise of unspoken words and the blossoming of a love as rare and precious as the pearls of the deepest ocean. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of Lord Ilara's receiving room. Soraya sat nervously, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Lord Ilara paced back and forth, his brow furrowed in concern. A servant had just delivered an unexpected message, a summons from the Sultan himself. Soraya knew in her heart what this meant. The scholar, the man who had captured her heart with his words and gentle kindness, was none other than Sultan Imran. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. A fanfare of trumpets announced the Sultan's arrival. The doors swung open and Imran entered, no longer disguised in scholar's robes, but dressed in the full regalia of his station. He was even more imposing than she remembered, his presence commanding attention, yet his eyes, when they met hers, held the same warmth and gentleness she had come to cherish. Lord Ilara bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, what an honor to have you grace our humble home." Imran smiled. "The honor is all mine, Lord Ilara. I have come to speak with you and your daughter, Soraya." Lord Ilara gestured towards Soraya, his face etched with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Imran approached her, his gaze unwavering. He took her hand, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Soraya," he began, his voice clear and strong, "I have spent these past weeks in your company, disguised as a humble scholar. I have been captivated by your intellect, your kindness, your quiet strength. I have come to admire you, to cherish you, to love you." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "Soraya, will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Soraya's heart soared. She opened her mouth to speak, the words of acceptance trembling on her lips, but before she could utter a sound, a shrill cry echoed through the room. "No, it cannot be!" Layla burst into the room, her face contorted with rage. She stormed towards Soraya, her eyes blazing with fury. You deceitful witch!" she shrieked. "You have bewitched him! You have used dark magic to steal him away from me!" Lord Ilara gasped, his face paling. "Layla, control yourself!" But Layla was beyond reason. She pointed a trembling finger at Soraya. "She has tricked him. She is not worthy. I am the one who should be sultana." Imran's face hardened. "Layla, enough," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority. "Your accusations are baseless and insulting. I have chosen Soraya of my own free will, and I will not tolerate such slander." Layla's fury intensified. "He is under your spell!" she screamed, turning to her father. "Now can't you see? She has used her wicked ways to ensnare him. We must protect our family's honor. We must expose her for the fraud she is." Soraya recoiled, hurt and bewildered by her sister's venomous words. She had never imagined such hatred, such bitterness. Lord Ilara, caught between his daughters, looked from one to the other, his face etched with confusion and distress. The joyous occasion had turned into a scene of chaos and accusation, the air thick with the poison of Layla's jealousy. Layla's accusations spread through the household like wildfire. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to open gossip. The servants, once respectful and discreet, now cast sideways glances at Soraya, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and suspicion. The news quickly reached the ears of the courtiers and dignitaries, spreading through the city like a plague. Soraya, once overlooked and unnoticed, became the subject of every conversation, her name whispered with a mixture of fascination and disdain. Layla, fueled by her jealousy and resentment, embellished her story with each retelling. She claimed to have witnessed Soraya performing strange rituals in the dead of night, chanting incantations under the pale light of the moon. She spoke of mysterious herbs and potions, of whispered spells and dark magic. She painted a picture of Soraya as a cunning sorceress, a woman who had used her wicked ways to ensnare the Sultan's heart. The rumors, though baseless, gained traction. People were quick to believe the worst, especially when it came to matters of the heart and the allure of power. Soraya's quiet nature, her preference for solitude and books, was now interpreted as evidence of her dark secrets. Her gentle kindness was seen as a mask, a deceptive facade hiding her true, manipulative nature. Lord Ilara, a man who valued honor and reputation above all else, was devastated by the scandal. He had always prided himself on the impeccable conduct of his daughters. Now his family name was tarnished, dragged through the mud by Layla's venomous accusations. He received numerous visits from concerned friends and relatives, all expressing their shock and dismay. The pressure from society was immense, the weight of expectation bearing down on him with crushing force. He summoned Soraya to his study, his face etched with worry and disappointment. "Soraya, my dear," he began, his voice heavy with sadness, "you must understand the gravity of this situation. Layla's accusations, though unfounded, have caused irreparable damage to our family's reputation. The whispers are growing louder, the doubts spreading like a disease." Soraya's heart ached. She had never wanted to bring shame upon her family, never intended to cause such turmoil. She looked at her father, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Father, I swear to you, I have done nothing wrong. I have used no magic, no spells. My feelings for Imran are genuine, my love for him true." Lord Ilara sighed, his shoulders slumping. I believe you, my dear, but belief alone is not enough. We must consider the consequences, the damage already done. The court, the city, they are convinced of your guilt. We must take action to restore our honor. He paused, his gaze meeting hers. Soraya, I must ask you to make a sacrifice for the good of our family. Soraya's heart sank. She knew what he was going to ask. You must reject the Sultan's proposal, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You must renounce your love for him, for the sake of our family's name. Soraya's world crumbled around her. Her father's words, though spoken with love and concern, felt like a death sentence. He was asking her to give up the man she loved, to sacrifice her own happiness for the sake of appearances. She felt a wave of despair wash over her, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Tears streamed down her face, silent witnesses to the agonizing choice she was being forced to make. She had always been the invisible daughter, the quiet observer. Now she was being asked to disappear completely, to erase herself from the story, for the sake of a family that seemed to value reputation more than her own happiness. Soraya retreated to her room, a sanctuary now turned prison. The vibrant colors of the tapestries seemed to mock her, the fragrant blossoms wilting in the vases a reflection of her own fading spirit. Her father's words echoed in her ears, a constant reminder of the sacrifice he demanded. Reject Imran. Renounce her love. Restore the family honor. How could she choose between the man she loved and the family she cherished? She picked up her quill, her fingers tracing the familiar curves, but the words wouldn't come. The poetry that once flowed so freely from her heart now seemed trapped, choked by the weight of her sorrow. She looked out the window, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains, their peaks shrouded in mist, a mirror of the confusion clouding her own mind. She had always been the quiet one, the observer, content to exist in the shadows of her sister's brilliance. Now her invisibility had become her cage, trapping her in a web of societal expectations and familial obligations. Days turned into weeks, each sunrise bringing a fresh wave of despair. She avoided the pavilion, the gardens, any place where she might encounter Imran. She declined invitations to social gatherings, feigning illness, her heart heavy with the secret she carried. Imran, unaware of the turmoil within Soraya's heart, was baffled by her sudden withdrawal. He had sent messages, gifts, even visited her father's estate, only to be met with polite excuses and closed doors. He couldn't understand her silence, her sudden coldness. He had confessed his love, declared his intention to marry her, and she had seemed receptive, her eyes reflecting the same depth of feeling he held in his own heart. Now she was a ghost, a whisper in the wind, just beyond his reach. He paced the confines of his private library, his mind racing, searching for an explanation. Had he misread her signals? Had he offended her in some way? He replayed their conversations in his mind, searching for a clue, a hint of what had gone wrong. He remembered her laughter, her insightful comments, the way her eyes lit up when they discussed poetry and philosophy. He couldn't believe she had simply changed her mind, that their connection had been nothing more than a fleeting illusion. He picked up a volume of her poetry, the verses she had shared with him in the hidden chamber of the library. He read the words, her voice echoing in his mind, the quiet strength of her spirit shining through each carefully crafted line. He refused to believe that the woman who had written these words, the woman who had captivated his heart with her intellect and authenticity, could simply vanish without a trace. He was determined to find her, to understand the reason for her sudden silence, to reclaim the connection they had shared. He knew deep in his heart that something was amiss, that a shadow had fallen upon their burgeoning love, a shadow he was determined to dispel. Imran, restless and troubled, couldn't shake the image of Soraya's withdrawn face, the unspoken sadness in her eyes. He knew something was amiss, something beyond a simple change of heart. The rumors of dark magic, whispered throughout the court, felt absurd, utterly incongruous with the intelligent, gentle woman he had come to know. He decided to investigate, to uncover the truth behind Soraya's sudden change. He began discreetly, questioning his own household staff. He learned that the rumors originated within Lord Ilara's estate, specifically from Layla, Soraya's elder sister. This piqued his interest. He remembered Layla's outburst during his proposal, her accusations of witchcraft, the raw jealousy that had flared in her eyes. Could Layla be the source of this malicious gossip? Imran, disguised once more in simple scholar's robes, ventured into the city. He frequented the tea houses and marketplaces, listening to the chatter of the common folk. He heard the whispers about Soraya, the tales of dark magic and bewitchment, each retelling more exaggerated than the last. He noted the fear in some voices, the fascination in others, the underlying current of judgment that ran through every conversation. He then turned his attention to Lord Ilara's household staff. He approached them cautiously, offering small kindnesses, engaging them in casual conversation. He learned of Layla's relentless campaign against Soraya, her constant whispers of witchcraft and manipulation. He heard of the pressure Lord Ilara was facing, the societal expectations that weighed heavily on him. He discovered that Soraya had been confined to her quarters, rarely seen, her spirit seemingly crushed. One evening, he encountered a young maidservant in the marketplace, a girl who had served Soraya since childhood. He offered her a cup of sweet tea and engaged her in conversation about the Ilara household. The girl, initially hesitant, gradually opened up, her loyalty to Soraya battling with her fear of the consequences of speaking out. "Mistress Soraya is a kind soul," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the crowded marketplace. "She would never harm a fly, let alone use dark magic." Imran leaned closer, his voice a low murmur. "What has happened to her? Why is she so withdrawn?" The girl hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Lady Layla, she has poisoned everyone's minds against Mistress Soraya. She claims she saw her performing dark rituals, casting spells to bewitch you, Your Majesty." Imran's jaw tightened. He had suspected Layla's involvement, but hearing it confirmed fueled his anger. "And Lord Ilara, does he believe these lies?" The maidservant lowered her gaze. "Lord Ilara is a good man, but he values his family's honor above all else. He is under immense pressure from the court, from society. He has asked Mistress Soraya to reject your proposal." Imran felt a surge of protectiveness towards Soraya. He understood now the true nature of her silence, the reason for her withdrawal. She was trapped, caught between her love for him and her loyalty to her family. He knew he had to act, to uncover the full extent of Layla's scheme and clear Soraya's name. He thanked the maidservant for her honesty and slipped a small coin into her hand. He returned to the palace, his mind racing, his heart heavy with the knowledge of Soraya's plight. He knew he couldn't rest until he had exposed the truth and freed her from the web of lies that had ensnared her. Soraya, though heartbroken, refused to surrender to despair. She knew in her heart that she had done nothing wrong. The accusations of witchcraft, the whispers of dark magic, were all lies, fabricated by Layla to destroy her happiness. She resolved to uncover the truth, to expose Layla's scheme and clear her own name. She began by observing her sister more closely. She noticed Layla's frequent absences from the estate, her secretive meetings with unknown individuals, the hushed whispers and furtive glances exchanged in darkened corridors. A suspicion began to form in Soraya's mind, a suspicion that Layla's motives extended beyond mere jealousy. One afternoon while Layla was out, Soraya ventured into her sister's room. She knew it was a risky move, but she felt compelled to search for clues, for any evidence that might shed light on Layla's plot. She searched carefully, her eyes scanning every corner, every drawer, every hidden compartment. She found nothing at first, only the expected finery, silks and jewels, perfumes and powders, the trappings of a woman obsessed with outward appearances. Then, tucked away in a small, locked chest, she found a stack of letters. Her heart pounded as she carefully broke the lock and opened the chest. The letters were addressed to Layla, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. She unfolded one of the letters and began to read. Her eyes widened with each line, her blood running cold as the truth began to unfold. The letters were from a rival suitor, a wealthy and influential nobleman who had also sought Imran's hand in marriage. He had been rejected, just like Layla. The letters revealed a secret pact between them, a conspiracy to sabotage Imran's choice of bride. Layla, driven by her thirst for revenge, had agreed to spread rumors about Soraya, to paint her as a manipulative sorceress, to discredit her in the eyes of the court and the city. In exchange, the rival suitor had promised her jewels and riches, a position of power and influence within his own household. Soraya's hands trembled as she read the incriminating words. She had never imagined her own sister capable of such treachery, such deceit. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound, a sharp pain that pierced her heart. She carefully placed the letters back in the chest, her mind racing, trying to comprehend the full extent of Layla's betrayal. She now understood the reason for her sister's venomous accusations, the relentless campaign to destroy her happiness. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a calculated plot, a desperate attempt to reclaim the power and prestige she craved. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Soraya felt a surge of resolve. She would not allow Layla to succeed. She would not be silenced, not be erased. She would expose the truth, no matter the cost. She had always been the quiet observer, the invisible daughter. But now, her invisibility would become her strength, allowing her to move unseen, to gather the evidence she needed to expose Layla's treachery and reclaim her own destiny. Imran sat in his private study, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the room. He held the maidservant's words in his mind, turning them over and over, searching for the missing pieces of the puzzle. Layla's jealousy was evident, but it didn't fully explain the depth of her animosity, the ferocity of her accusations. There had to be more to her scheme, a hidden motive driving her actions. He remembered the rival suitor, Lord Kazim, a man known for his ambition and ruthlessness. He had openly courted Layla before Imran's arrival, his interest waning only after Imran's ascension to the throne. Could there be a connection between Layla's sudden animosity towards Soraya and Kazim's thwarted ambitions? Imran summoned his most trusted advisor, a man known for his discretion and his network of informants. "I need information on Lord Kazim," Imran instructed, his voice low and urgent. "His movements, his associates, his recent dealings. I want to know everything." The advisor bowed his head and discreetly left the room. 2 days later, the advisor returned, his face grim. He presented Imran with a sealed document. Its contents gleaned from intercepted messages and whispered conversations in darkened corners of the city. Imran broke the seal and began to read. As he scanned the lines, his suspicions were confirmed, and a wave of anger washed over him. The document detailed a clandestine meeting between Layla and Lord Kazim, a meeting held in a secluded garden just outside the city walls. Witnesses had overheard snippets of their conversation, fragments of a plot to sabotage Imran's choice of bride. Kazim, bitter and resentful of his rejection, had offered Layla a substantial sum of money and a prominent position within his household in exchange for her cooperation. Layla, driven by her own thwarted ambitions and her desire for revenge, had readily agreed. The plan was simple, yet devastatingly effective. Layla would spread rumors about Soraya, accusing her of witchcraft and dark magic, poisoning the minds of the court and the city against her. She would play on societal prejudices and fears, exploiting the whispers and superstitions that often surrounded women of intelligence and independent thought. The goal was to discredit Soraya completely, to make her an unsuitable choice for Sultana, thus paving the way for Kazim to propose a more acceptable bride, one who would be under his influence, a puppet dancing to his tune. Imran's anger burned hot within him. He had been betrayed, not just by a rival suitor, but by a woman he had considered a potential ally, a member of a family he had respected. He had been manipulated, used as a pawn in their game of power and revenge. But more importantly, Soraya had been wronged, her reputation tarnished, her happiness stolen. He crumpled the document in his fist, his resolve hardening. He would not allow this injustice to stand. He would expose Layla's treachery, clear Soraya's name, and ensure that both she and Kazim faced the consequences of their actions. He would protect the woman he loved, and in doing so, he would uphold the principles of justice and fairness that guided his reign. Soraya stood before her sister, the incriminating letters clutched tightly in her hand. Layla sat at her vanity table, surrounded by her usual array of perfumes and powders, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing within her sister's heart. Soraya's knuckles were white as she approached, her footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent room. "Layla," Soraya began, her voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk." Layla turned, her perfectly arched eyebrows raised in feigned surprise. "Soraya, what is it? You look pale. Are you unwell?" Soraya ignored the feigned concern and held up the letters. "I found these in your chest. I know everything." Layla's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. She quickly recovered her composure, a mask of indifference replacing the momentary panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said dismissively, turning back to her vanity table. "Those are just old letters. Nothing of importance." Soraya stepped closer, her voice gaining strength. "Don't lie to me, Layla. These letters are from Lord Kazim. They detail your plot to sabotage my relationship with the Sultan, to spread rumors about me, to ruin my reputation." Layla's hand trembled as she reached for a silver-backed brush, her movements betraying her growing unease. "You're imagining things," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Soraya placed the letters on the vanity table, their presence a stark reminder of Layla's betrayal. "These letters prove everything," she said, her voice firm and unwavering. "They reveal your pact with Lord Kazim, your agreement to spread lies about me in exchange for jewels and power." Layla's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. She slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "It's not true," she cried, her voice laced with desperation. "You're twisting everything. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of me." Soraya met her sister's gaze, her own eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Jealous? Of what, Layla? Of your constant need for attention? Of your obsession with outward appearances? Of your willingness to sacrifice everything, even your own family, for power and prestige?" Layla's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a way out of the corner she had painted herself into. "You're lying!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You're trying to ruin me! You've always hated me!" Soraya shook her head, her heart heavy with the weight of her sister's deceit. "I don't hate you, Layla. I pity you. I pity your emptiness, your inability to see the true value of things, the beauty that lies within. not in glittering jewels or empty titles. Layla's face contorted with rage, her eyes blazing with a desperate fury. She lunged towards Soraya, her hands outstretched as if to strike her. Soraya stood her ground, unflinching, her quiet strength a shield against her sister's fury. Layla stopped short, her hands trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by a hollow desperation, the realization that her carefully constructed web of lies had finally unraveled. She sank back onto her chair, her shoulders slumping, her gaze fixed on the incriminating letters that lay between them, silent witnesses to her betrayal. The silence in the room was thick with unspoken words, the air heavy with the weight of shattered trust and the bitter taste of regret. The grand hall of the Sultan's palace buzzed with anticipation. Nobles in their finest silks and jewels filled the chamber, their voices a low murmur of speculation. Lord Ilara and his daughters were present, Layla pale and restless, Yasmin wide-eyed with curiosity, and Soraya composed but with a quiet fire in her eyes. Imran, seated upon his raised throne, surveyed the assembled crowd, his face unreadable. He rose, his voice ringing through the hall, silencing the whispers and murmurs. "I have called you here today to address a matter of grave importance, a matter that touches upon the very foundations of trust and honor." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the faces before him. "As you know, I have been searching for a bride, a woman who possesses not only beauty and grace, but also intelligence, integrity, and a deep understanding of the world around her." He turned his gaze towards Soraya, his eyes softening. "I have found such a woman whose quiet strength and gentle wisdom have captured my heart, a woman whose words have inspired me, whose spirit has touched me in ways I cannot express." He stepped down from his throne and approached Soraya, taking her hand in his. "Soraya, daughter of Lord Ilara, you are the woman I have chosen. You are the woman I love." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Lord Ilara's face was a mixture of relief and apprehension. Layla's face contorted with rage, her hands clenched into fists. Imran continued, his voice gaining strength. "However, there are those who have sought to undermine my choice, to cast shadows upon Soraya's character, to tarnish her reputation with lies and deceit." He turned his gaze towards Layla, his eyes hardening. "Layla, your accusations of witchcraft, your whispers of dark magic are nothing more than malicious fabrications, born of jealousy and a thirst for power you do not deserve." Layla's face paled, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Imran held up a scroll, its contents visible to all. "These are the letters exchanged between you and Lord Kazim. Letters that detail your conspiracy to sabotage my choice of bride, to spread lies and rumors in exchange for jewels and a position of influence within his household." A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Lord Kazim, his face ashen, tried to shrink back into the crowd, but it was too late. The guards, at Imran's signal, stepped forward and apprehended him. Imran addressed the crowd once more, his voice ringing with authority. "Let this serve as a warning to all who would seek to undermine the principles of justice and fairness that guide my reign. Lies and deceit will not be tolerated. Truth and integrity will always prevail." He turned back to Soraya, his eyes filled with love and admiration. "Soraya, my love, you have endured these false accusations with grace and dignity. Your quiet strength has shone through the darkness, revealing the truth for all to see." He took her hand once more, his grip firm and reassuring. "Together, we will build a future based on honesty and trust, a future where true beauty, the beauty that lies within, is celebrated above all else." Imran raised his hand, silencing the murmurs that rippled through the hall. He looked at Soraya, his eyes filled with a warmth that belied the sternness of his pronouncements. "There is one final matter I wish to address," he said, his voice resonating with a quiet power. A matter that reveals the depth of Soraya's character, the brilliance of her mind, the true beauty that lies within. He turned to address the crowd once more. For many months, I have been receiving poems from a mysterious source, a poet who writes under the pseudonym Nightingale. These poems, filled with wisdom and insight, have captivated me with their beauty and depth. They speak of a soul that sees the world with uncommon clarity, a heart that understands the nuances of human emotion. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled guests. I have searched for this nightingale, eager to meet the author of these exquisite verses. Imagine my surprise, my delight, when I discovered that the nightingale is none other than Soraya herself. A wave of astonishment swept through the hall. Soraya's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never told anyone about her secret writings, her poems submitted anonymously to a literary journal the Sultan was known to patronize. Imran smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Soraya, your words have touched my heart long before I met you in person. Your poetry speaks of a quiet strength, a deep understanding of the world, a profound appreciation for the beauty that lies within. These are the qualities I seek in a partner, in a queen. He took her hand once more, his touch sending a wave of warmth through her. Soraya, daughter of Lord Ilara, poet of the night, you are my chosen bride. You are the woman I love, not for your outward appearance, but for the beauty of your mind, the depth of your soul. Soraya's heart swelled with emotion. She looked at Imran, her eyes shining with tears of joy and gratitude. She realized, in that moment, that her invisibility, her quiet observation of the world, had been her greatest strength. It had allowed her to see the truth, to uncover the lies, to navigate the complexities of courtly intrigue and familial betrayal. Her quiet presence, once a source of insecurity, had become her shield, her weapon, her path to a love that transcended outward appearances and embraced the true beauty that lay within. The aftermath of the Sultan's declaration was a whirlwind of activity. Lord Kazim, stripped of his titles and wealth, was banished from the kingdom. Layla, disgraced and humiliated, was sent to live with a distant aunt, a stern woman known for her unwavering moral compass. It was hoped that a period of quiet reflection, away from the pressures of courtly life, would help Layla understand the consequences of her actions and perhaps one day find redemption. Lord Ilara, his pride wounded but his relief palpable, sought out Soraya. He found her in the palace gardens, the setting sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. She stood by a fountain, its gentle spray a soothing counterpoint to the turmoil that had recently engulfed their family. He approached her hesitantly, his face etched with remorse. "Soraya, my dear," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you an apology. I allowed myself to be swayed by appearances, by the whispers and rumors, by the pressure of societal expectations. I doubted you, questioned your integrity, and for that, I am truly sorry." Soraya turned to face him, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Father," she said softly, "I know you acted out of concern for our family's honor, but sometimes what appears to be true is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion." Lord Ilara nodded, his shoulders slumping with the weight of his regret. "I have learned a valuable lesson, my dear. True beauty lies not in outward appearances, but in the qualities of the heart, in the strength of one's character." He took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "I am proud of you, Soraya. You have faced adversity with grace and courage, and you have emerged stronger, wiser, and more radiant than ever before." Soraya smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. The hurt and resentment she had felt towards her father began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of forgiveness and renewed affection. The bond between them, strained by recent events, began to mend, strengthened by the shared experience of navigating the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue and familial betrayal. With the shadows of doubt and deception dispelled, preparations for the wedding began in earnest. The palace buzzed with activity, the air filled with the scent of exotic flowers and the sounds of joyful music. Seamstresses worked tirelessly on Soraya's wedding gown, a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, adorned with pearls and shimmering crystals. Gardeners transformed the palace grounds into a paradise of fragrant blossoms and lush greenery. Chefs prepared elaborate feasts, their creations a symphony of flavors and aromas. The entire kingdom rejoiced at the news of the upcoming nuptials. Soraya, once overlooked and unnoticed, was now celebrated as a symbol of intelligence, integrity, and inner strength. Her story, a tale of resilience and triumph, resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring them to look beyond outward appearances and embrace the true beauty that lay within. The wedding promised to be a grand affair, a celebration not only of love and union, but also of truth and justice, a testament to the power of words and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a fitting symbol of the new beginning that awaited Soraya and Imran. The grand hall of the palace, transformed into a breathtaking spectacle of flowers and shimmering silks, was filled with guests from across the kingdom. Soraya, radiant in her ivory gown, walked down the aisle towards Imran, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Her once quiet presence now commanded the attention of all, her inner beauty shining brighter than any jewel. Imran, his eyes filled with adoration, met her at the altar, their hands clasped, their vows exchanged, their love a beacon of hope for the kingdom. As they were pronounced husband and wife, a cheer erupted from the assembled guests, a joyous celebration of their union. Soraya, now sultana, embraced her new role with grace and wisdom. She used her position to champion the causes she held dear, promoting education and literacy, especially for women. Together, she and Imran established a literary salon within the palace, a haven for women of all backgrounds to gather and share their thoughts, their stories, their poems. It was a place where beauty and intellect were celebrated in equal measure, where women could find their voices and express their creativity without fear of judgment or censure. The salon quickly became a hub of intellectual and artistic exchange, attracting women from across the kingdom. Soraya presided over the gatherings with warmth and encouragement, fostering an atmosphere of open dialogue and mutual respect. She shared her own poetry, her words inspiring others to find their own voices, to express their own truths. Word of the salon spread beyond the palace walls, reaching the ears of women in even the most remote corners of the kingdom. They flocked to the capital, eager to participate in this unprecedented celebration of female intellect and creativity. Soraya welcomed them all, creating a space where women from all walks of life, from noblewomen to merchants' daughters, from scholars to artisans, could come together, share their stories, and learn from one another. Soraya, once overlooked and invisible, became a beacon of wisdom and inspiration for the entire kingdom. She proved that true beauty lies not in outward appearances, but in the strength of one's character, the depth of one's intellect, the kindness of one's heart. Her quiet presence, once a source of insecurity, had become her greatest strength, a guiding light that illuminated the path towards a more just and equitable society. She had transformed her invisibility into a powerful force for change, proving that even the quietest voices can resonate with power and inspire a kingdom. Her story, once a tale of being overlooked, became a legend whispered from mother to daughter, a testament to the enduring power of inner beauty and the transformative power of words.